session. So today we are very pleased to welcome Ms. Catherine O'Connell, a foreign legal lawyer practicing in Japan. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, I would like to about your background, and so which jurisdiction are you admitted to practice in?
I'm admitted to practice in New Zealand, and I'm also on the register for the England and Wales bar. So I first came to Japan in 1985. I was currently studying Japanese full-time, and the class of Japanese students, Japanese language students, came to Japan to feature in a fair, New Zealand fair in Nagano-ken in Kuramayama Kogen. So we were working on the ski fields, working in the restaurants, and I was working in a restaurant. And we were practicing our Japanese while we were explaining about New Zealand.
And what was the impression at the first time in Japan?
Yes, well, I had studied Japanese for a long time, 2 years full time, but the actual impact of Japan was quite different to textbook. Of course, I could hear real Japanese on the streets. I could understand more about the culture here. As I said, I worked in a restaurant in Kuramayama, so I learned all the restaurant vocabulary. It was quite different to learning a textbook Japanese. So my learning was to come to Japan and be very open to knowing that there are two kinds of Japanese, formal Japanese and also the Japanese that is spoken amongst regular Japanese people in Japan.
Choose Japanese as you are you study at the college or university?
That's a great question. I am often asked this question. So when I left school, I wanted to do something different. And at the time, New Zealand was experiencing a boom of Japanese tourists to the country. Honeymooners and also people who were older coming to New Zealand to see the scenery and meet the people. And so I decided that Japanese would be a great language to learn because I wanted to work in the tourism industry at that time. So that's why I started to learn Japanese.
So after you graduate school or college, you enter in the law school?
So after I graduated Japanese, I worked full-time as a tour guide for JTB. So I was a tour guide for Japanese tourists in New Zealand. I did that for around 2.5 years. And then during my time as a tour guide, some Japanese lawyers joined as my clients. And they asked me a lot of questions about law, how the laws are made in New Zealand, how do people become a lawyer. And I got curious about the law. And so I went home and studied. And as I studied about law, I became more and more interested. So I ended up finishing my role with JTB and enrolling in the university and studying law.
Very unique motivation. Do you have any relationship with that lawyers, Japanese lawyers?
Those lawyers wrote me letters. When I came to Japan, they took me to Tokyo Tower and other places around Japan. And so, yes, those lawyers are still in my life.
So when did you first come to Japan as a lawyer?
I first came to Japan as a lawyer in November 2002. When I graduated law school in New Zealand, I entered a law firm that was specializing in providing legal advice to Japanese corporates and individuals in New Zealand. So I found out later I was the first Japanese-speaking lawyer in New Zealand after one other embassy person who was also a lawyer. So I ended up helping many different kinds of people in New Zealand from a corporate perspective, helping large Japanese corporates with business in New Zealand, and also smaller businesses such as people who were setting up ramen shops or yakitori shops, and others who had difficulty with the New Zealand legal system. Maybe they didn't realize what they had to do if they were divorcing, or they had a family court issue, or they had a traffic offense. I ended up getting called by the consular office of Japan a lot to help out people who got in difficulty as well, who were Japanese. Yes, I covered lots of different areas, but my real passion was to do corporate and commercial law. But because I'm a Japanese-speaking lawyer, it really is on me to be able to help anybody that I can possibly help. And so I was broadly helping many different areas as well, as I mentioned.
So, what originally brought you here? So, I mean, yeah, why did you come? Did you come to Japan?
Exactly. So I was comfortable in my work in New Zealand, but one of my really great friends, and I'll mention her name, Tania, she's a great lawyer and a partner in a law firm in New Zealand now, and she handed me one of the law magazines. So Niben has Frontier magazine. In New Zealand, we have a magazine called Law Talk. And inside Law Talk was an advertisement to come and work in Japan as an in-house legal counsel for a large multi-global company. And that was Olympus Corporation. And so I came to Japan having successfully done well in the interview, and I took up a one-year contract in Japan. And that was 23 years ago.
So, and then we moved to the work in Japan. So could you please tell us about your current work in Japan? What kind of matters?
Yeah, so coming into Japan, I spent many, many years working in-house before I became a Niben lawyer. So my work is focused in three areas. First is I help small and medium enterprises, SMEs. I wanted to help smaller companies and individuals who don't have the full access to legal services in Japan. And so I wanted to help them, and I do that work for them. Secondly, as a Niben, of course, I'm focusing on interactions and commercial trade between New Zealand and Japan. And so with Japanese Bengoshi, I collaborate to help New Zealand companies come into Japan safely and securely. And third, I really love in-house legal counsel work. And so my law firm practice here is based on fractional general counsel work. So I will provide my time to many different companies who don't have a lawyer on their staff, who maybe can't afford the big firm lawyers. So I help them with an in-house legal counsel mindset to ensure that they can get good business and law advice into their businesses.
So how does your international background help you in your work here?
I think it helps me because I can bridge two different mindsets and two different sets of jurisdiction. Japan is a civil law country and is based on Japanese language and 6 different kinds of laws. New Zealand is a common law country and has totally different set of rules made by precedent. And so bridging the mindset between those two, neither one is better than the other, they're just different. So I think that's the main element that I do, is bridge cultures, bridge the law differences, and bridge the people together so that despite the law difference, they can still be collaborators in business in Japan.
So what is the most difficult task for you to bridge common law and civil law? So it's for us, it's totally different, sounds totally different ideas. So do you have any difficulty?
I think the difficulty for me has been when I have, for example, there are TV programs in Japan and they usually have a lawyer on the team. And I'm guessing the answer to the question, such as, we got married, I received an engagement ring, we're not getting married, I have to give the ring back or not. So when I predict what my answer would be in a common law thinking, when it comes to Japan, the answer is completely different. And so I find that quite complicated, and that originally I wondered why it was so different. Why does Japan allow you to keep the ring, whereas say under common law, you have to give it back? But later I realized it's just different. There's a different approach to the way the law is done. And New Zealand is a descendant of a colony of England. So of course we learned English law. And Japan has its origins in Holland and in German law. So of course there's a different approach. And so it becomes very natural when you expect the differences there. But at the first time I was trying to understand civil law, it felt very foreign to me as well.
So, you are a member of our bar association, Daini Tokyo Bar Association. And why did you choose to register with Niben?
I've been a Niben now in Japan, thanks to everybody who's supported me for more than 8 years. When I first registered, I was with another bar, and I had a lot of support from them during the first 8 years. As I built my community in Japan, in Tokyo especially, I found that I had many of my friends who were bengoshi, Japanese lawyers, and also other Niben. So those friends were in the Daini Tokyo Bengoshi Kai, so the Niben. And they encouraged me to be part of what they were doing, but it felt difficult to do that if I was associated with another bar. So the real reason for joining Niben was because the community and the network I had built up in Tokyo with Niben friends, general counsels as well, who were Niben, and Japanese lawyers. They were all focused in Niben. And I had seen some of the activities of Niben, and they're very fun. And I like enjoying my life in Japan as a lawyer as well. So I joined Niben.
Thank you for your great comment. So, how do you feel about the atmosphere of Niben and your interaction with our members, Niben members?
When I joined Niben, very soon after, the International Committee had an event. It was fantastic. We got to meet together. It was a great fun activity where we all got to know each other around the separate tables. We had an activity where we could map out various things that we liked about Tokyo, such as places to eat. And by that collaboration, through not talking about law exactly, talking about ourselves and the things that we like in Japan, we could collaborate and communicate and connect over food and drinks for that kind of activity. And I think that's a really important activity because most bar associations around the world don't have that reputation for being fun. But Niben is definitely my choice of bar because it's lots of fun and it's really enjoyable meeting all the variety of Niben lawyers as well as bengoshi lawyers who are part of the bar association. And I really want to thank Morita-san or Morita-sensei, who was the chairperson of that committee who arranged that fantastic event.
Thank you very much for your warm comment. So move to the cultural impression of Japan.
Yeah.
So what has it been like living and working in Japan? How do you feel?
I think working in Japan has been an incredible education in culture and also building my character. One of the biggest learnings that I have is that trust is built in Japan through consistency, through genuine conversations, and building real commitment to nurturing relationships. You show up, you promise what you are going to do, and you do it, following through. Secondly, I love how Japan blends so much rigidity with laws and rules, but with grace. You don't see that mixture in other countries. It happens in law and business, and even the takyuben guy coming to the door and bowing with grace. There's such beauty in all of that. And third, I think in New Zealand, when there's a gap in a conversation, New Zealanders will fill that gap quickly with conversation. But in Japan, it's the art of the pause and the silence that is really important. And I think as a lawyer, I've learned to pause more, be silent, and wait for my counterparty, be it a bengoshi or another Niben, or a client or customer, to speak when they want. There's a lot that happens in the spaces between words. So Japan, I think, teaches you patience, humility, respect, and that goes beyond the law and beyond the business.
future plan. Could you tell me your experience about
Yes.
collaboration with Japanese lawyers?
I'm sure that people looking at this video have heard of Shakespeare. And Shakespeare in the play, The Taming of the Shrew, said this. Let me read it. Do as adversaries do in law, strive mightily, but eat and drink as friends. So he pulled a contrast between lawyers fighting, but also eating and drinking together. But I think if Shakespeare was in Japan, he would realize it's different here, because especially between Bengoshi and Gaiben, we are not adversaries, we are collaborators. We also eat and drink together, but we collaborate in the law. As a boutique law firm owner providing New Zealand law advice, I'm unable to provide Japanese law advice. So naturally, I'm spending a lot of time with Japanese lawyers to collaborate, especially on those New Zealand-Japan international matters. I help them, they help me. I think it's a really wonderful two-way exchange. So I've learned very deeply through working with Japanese Bengoshi about the approach to doing business transactions in Japan. And I think they've also learned from my New Zealand way as well. And I really think that's what working with the world means, collaborating together to achieve the same goal.
So do you have any advice to Japanese lawyers, our colleagues, and to have what is the important fact to collaborate with foreign lawyers?
I think Japanese lawyers already collaborate well because they're so patient with foreign lawyers who have a different way of doing things. But be confident, be true to who you are, and explain the law as you can, and help non-Japanese lawyers, and help Gaiben to understand the approach that happens in Japan. But ask enough questions to the foreign lawyer to understand why they have a certain approach or a particular way of doing something. And I think if you converse together before you speak with a client, perhaps you're going to find out that there's a different approach, but you both want the same thing. So my advice again would be take time to listen to each other and work out where the combination of you both working together is going to achieve the best goal for the client.
So, next question. So, looking toward the future, what are your goals as a lawyer in Japan?
I have three main goals. First is I'm currently writing a book. It's about careers in law in Japan. I'm a host of a podcast called Lawyer on Air, and I've interviewed 100 lawyers, both Japanese and foreign, mostly female. They have an amazing amount of wisdom to share. And although you can listen to them on the podcast and hear their voice, I want to bring out the themes across all the different lawyers and bring it into a book that I hope can be helpful for people who want to come and have an international legal career in Japan as a Gaiben. Secondly, collaborations. I'm really keen to see more collaborations between Niben and many other foreign jurisdictions. For example, with New Zealand, I would love to be able to take a delegation to New Zealand, have you learn more about the laws and business over there, and of course take you to a few wineries because we've got great wine. Third is a midterm collaboration goal with law students. I have many people come up to me who are law students in Japan, Japanese and foreign, and they are seeking more information and mentoring from other older lawyers in the community. And I would love to be the person who collaborates and helps them come together. And also go around the law schools to share the book that is finally published. And long term, my last goal would be to continue to show the opening of pathways to do law in Japan and discover the richness of working here as a lawyer.
So you say you said many times that the collaboration, and I think it's a keyword for you. So are there any ways you'd like to collaborate with Japanese lawyers or firms in future?
I think Japanese law firms and perhaps our businesses that have got bengoshi working in them and other lawyers, they're looking for mentorship. And I believe the podcast is in some way that I do is a way of mentoring people at scale. I can't mentor everybody one-on-one, but the podcast helps. And the lawyers who are bengoshi that come on that podcast, they are also mentoring many people in the community, probably more than they know. But formalizing a mentoring program that is bringing bengoshi's knowledge and experience into a community that I can also help them to collaborate and to help mentoring our younger generation. They are struggling with AI, with how am I going to be a lawyer in this future? And I think we as a common group of lawyers, bengoshi and gaiben, we can help mentor the future generation. So my wish would be to help set up a mentoring program for the law firms in Japan and bring the two together to help the future up-and-coming lawyers.
Thank you. So many impressive and energetic comments. So thank you very much today for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.